Hi, I'm Gemma Wilkes and welcome to episode 1 of Wheel Women podcast, inspiring women to ride bikes. We're going to be chatting to various women and maybe some men throughout the cycling world, from the beginner level up through to the pros. As you may know, I'm making a documentary about women in cycling at the moment, and I've had some amazing chats with so many women and a few men from around the world. And there was just so much content that I wanted to share with you, far too much for one documentary. So I had this idea to do a spin-off podcast. So here we are. My first guest is Louise from InternationElles. So you may know that the Tour de France doesn't have a women's race at the moment. So Louise is part of a women's team who ride the whole 2,000-mile route before the men ride it, to highlight the inequality and to show that women can ride it too. So she is incredibly inspiring. I really enjoyed meeting her and having a chat. So I hope you enjoy the first episode. So please, could you tell me your name and introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Louise Gibson. I'm 42. I took up cycling about 6-7 years ago. I used to be a runner, not a very good runner, but just did it for fun. Was quite into long distance, but just kept getting injured. Eventually, whilst training for London Marathon, I injured myself so badly that I saw a hip specialist who told me I could never run again because of the amount of damage I'd done. I would, if I carried on, need a hip replacement, which I would then have to get replaced as I got older, multiple times. So he suggested I take up cycling. So I was a little bit reluctant at the beginning, but eventually did. So, got a pretty cheap bike to get started, eventually did a sportive and did quite well in it. Then started taking it a little bit more seriously, but was always, annoyed at not being a runner anymore. So refused to be a proper cyclist by wearing lycra and clipping in and all that stuff. So I would wear my London Marathon gear on the bike. If anyone asked about me being a cyclist, I'd say, no, I'm a runner on a bike and all this kind of rubbish. I was also always in a rush because my little boys were very young. One of them was at preschool, so I had a 2.5 hour window to get my exercise and everything else I needed to do done. So I was always, pushed for time. My marriage was also breaking down at the time too, so I was in quite a bad place. So I was training harder than I realised because I was in a rush and in a bad mood. So I was kind of taking all my frustration out on the bike. Unbeknownst to me, got really good at it, really strong. And then when I did get divorced, I then used the money to buy a nice bike, joined a cycling club and threw myself into cycling. Made tons of really good friends. A bunch of us got together, formed a team last year of women that push for equality, because there's just a massive gender gap in cycling. The opportunities for the men and the opportunities for women are so different. And as a new person into the sport, it just became so apparent to me, coming from running where it's pretty equal. Paula Radcliffe is up there as a superstar, whereas people can't name women cyclists at all in the same way. So it was just fresh eyes into cycling for me, and just everything really stood out as not okay. So I suppose I've thrown myself into the sport and got involved pretty high level as quickly as I could. And I've loved it. I got a coach a couple of years ago to help push me even further, and managed I did a training ride at the Tour of Cambridgeshire and managed to qualify for the Grand Fondo World Championships. So I've represented Great Britain twice as well, which I would have never believed. So yeah, cycling has changed my life, and I'm glad I actually did take the advice of the surgeon and took it up.
That's a really inspirational entry to the sport. Coming into it what feels like relatively late in life.
Yeah, gosh, I must have been 36 or something, I suppose.
Yeah, it just shows you're not too late, come in. No, I think that's the thing. Some women find it all a bit intimidating if they haven't done it. I've got kids, I've got a daughter and a son, and they've been cycling. I think she did her first race when she was 3. She just is one with her bike in a way that I just am not. But she's gonna feel really confident with cycling and the world of cycling, but it can be a bit intimidating coming in later on.
it really is intimidating to get into because it's a very male-dominated sport, and a lot of the males are quite vocal about all of the things, all of the kit, all of the bikes, and to begin with, I was just like, oh gosh, I don't know all the parts of the bike and I don't know what to do. Now, I don't care. I can ride my bike. I can keep up with all those guys. A lot of the time I can overtake them. It doesn't matter that I don't know all the ins and outs of my bikes. I know how to maintain them basically, and I have a really good relationship with my local bike shop that help me out. So it doesn't matter. So now with some confidence, I'm able to look past that intimidation. But for people starting out, it really is quite intimidating getting into cycling. I think for men and women, but mostly for women, because there's just not as many women out there. If you go to a club ride, I might be one or two women within a group of 50 men that know it all.
Don't they just, some of them? And yeah, I think that you're right, that relationship with your local bike shop, they are so important. So many people know the sort of big brands of bike shop, who can be brilliant in their own right, but actually I think it's usually the smaller, I don't know if yours is an independent, but getting that relationship with somebody is really, really useful.
It is really useful. I have a great relationship with my local bike shop. They're an independent one. It's actually in Richmond, where I used to live, but that's because it was where I bought my first bike, and I've always gone back to them. And they really encouraged me and believed in me from the start too. I suppose they saw a potential, they saw a fire in my belly and have pushed me. So I keep going back to them and just to support them as well. I mean, this year, with the whole world taking up cycling while everyone's in lockdown, they've had a fantastic year anyway, but normally the local bike shops can be struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I think, and they've got a lot of power to help women cyclists. I know the Pankhurst Cycles in near Reading, Streatley, where we had the hill climb. Actually, no, they're not in Streatley, they're just outside Streatley. The hill climb was in Streatley anyway, the Nationals, and the woman that won that was supported by her local bike shop, and she didn't have a car, but he did, so he was driving her to races, and she's kind of become part of his team, and he's really got behind her. And I think it's quite interesting actually, because the technical side is quite intimidating. I have a very competent husband and he does all that, so I don't pretend to be an expert, and I know I should learn how to do it all, but the reality is balancing everything and just finding the time to train and race. If I had to learn how to do all that as well and do it competently, as you saw with the camera, we know our strengths, and I think that's really important as women. It actually is being able to say, I don't know how to do this, I haven't got the time, enthusiasm, energy, knowledge, whatever, to learn about it, but can you help me? And we're not good at asking for help.
No, women aren't great at asking for help, and also women are always trying to do everything to the best of their ability all the time. So I was lucky enough when I had kids, I left work at the time, mainly because childcare was so blinking expensive. I wouldn't have been making any money going back to work, but I was in a position where I could look after my children, and I had so many friends that were struggling with doing both, because they're trying to be an amazing mum, an amazing career woman, and you can't do it. Something has to give somewhere. So it's best if you spread your time how you can, realise what your strengths are, and the stuff that you're not so great at or don't have time for, get rid of it and let someone else who is an expert, or someone who you can afford to pay to do it, let them do it. We don't have to do everything all the time.
No, I think that's an incredibly important lesson that I'm learning more as I go through life. I didn't ask for help when my kids were young, to the extent I should have done. My mum also had cancer and died when my daughter was nearly 3. So I was going through that at the same time, and I didn't ask for help. I didn't say, can you look after my kids so I can go to hospital, please? I felt really guilty asking friends or my husband to take time off work to do that. And in hindsight, I was an idiot. I should have said, I need 2 hours off because I need to go and see my mother for an hour, and I need half an hour to get there and back without feeling absolutely stressed. Is that okay? And of course people would have said yes, but
they would, but People would often say yes, but sometimes I find it much easier to remember when people have said no, and then you don't ask again, or people let you down. You think, oh, I should have done it myself anyway, which is like my mum always used to say, and I, find myself saying it as well now. So sometimes we are our worst enemies, and sometimes saying, I need help, we might as well go, I'm a failure, I'm weak. It feels the same, and it really shouldn't be, because everyone asks for help, everyone delegates, but yeah, we are our own worst enemies sometimes.
Yeah, I think dressing it up as delegation, you're right, makes you feel more confident about what you're doing. But actually, yeah, saying I need help is probably more realistic. And can you talk to me about what you've been doing on the women's side of things to address the gender imbalance?
Yeah, so the way all of my equality work has come about is basically a couple of years ago I heard about a French team called Donnons des Ailes au Vélo, which is a group of French women which are battling for equality in France by riding the full route of the Tour de France the day before the pros. Basically because there is no women's equivalent of the Tour de France. Each year they open up applications for new members to join the team, and 2 years ago so many people from outside of France wanted to be part of the team that they put us all in touch with each other and just said, would you like to form your own international team to ride with us on the tour? So yeah, I absolutely jumped at the chance. A few of the people who'd applied weren't then interested in going forward because it was a massive undertaking. It's also completely self-funded. But there was about 5 or 6 of us that were interested. We roped in a couple of extra friends, so then we became a team of 10 women from around the world who got together to ride with this French team last year. So we met thanks to the powers of the internet. We didn't all know each other beforehand. We all met in Brussels before stage 1 of the tour, and we rode the full Tour de France the day before the pros. We got a lot of coverage about what we were doing because it was such a big undertaking, and so many people just couldn't believe that there isn't anything for women. There's no multi-stage race in France, and the reasons around the reasons around there being no multi-stage race in France is there's a whole range of them. The people are saying that women aren't capable of riding the distance, that logistically it's too hard, there's no funding, there's no sponsorship. They're all excuses that if they did want to change them, people could. And the reason that women aren't capable is just absolute rubbish. We managed to ride the whole tour, and we're a bunch of amateurs, some of us with kids, all of us with day jobs. So the professionals absolutely could. It went really well. So we came together as a team with the French team. The French team rode again this year. They went a month early because of COVID. They had the advantage of already being in France. We unfortunately couldn't get to France this year because of quarantine restrictions. We have a few American riders on the team. American citizens aren't even allowed into France at the moment. So we still rode the full length of the Tour de France, but we did it on turbo trainers this year in a relay, and then each of us Everested so we could tick off the elevation of the Tour de France. And again, we hit the news, and we're lots of coverage about what we were doing and why we were pushing for equality, and had really great messages all the way through from the pros supporting us, that we were saying stuff that they can't really say because some of them are just made to feel that they should be so lucky with whatever they get. A lot of them aren't even making, minimum wage and stuff like that. So they're afraid of losing contracts and stuff like that. So they were happy with us being able to just say all the stuff they want to. So we had, support from pros all the way down to grassroots, little girls just seeing us doing what we were doing and hoping one day that things would change, that then they would be able to ride a women's Tour de France when they're older. And that's the biggest thing for us. Is I would love to think that when, if there's a brother and a sister, that the sister doesn't think, oh, I can't do what he's doing just because I'm a girl. I hate that, and that's what's pushing us on, is any changes we make now are going to take so long to, come through, and logistics take so long, and sponsorship and all of that stuff, that it's not going to happen anytime soon. So none of us are actually going to benefit from it. It's for the future, the little girls, to just make sure that they don't have to go through what we've been through, is that we just don't have the same opportunities as the men do.
Thank you, because my daughter's 8 and she's cycling. She cycled cross races. They were both going to ride Assen this year in Holland, which is the kids' race, road racing, over 5 or 6 days. But because of COVID, they were so excited to do it, both of them, and they missed out. And they love their riding. And yeah, we have worked. I mean, they both do football, they both do ballet, they both do cycling. They've both been pushed in all these different directions to just see what sticks, which activity they enjoy, and everything complements each other. The ballet helps with the football, and the cycling, the flexibility. And I just, it does make me mad. There are no boys and girls toys. There's just the toys we choose to buy our boys and the toys we choose to buy our girls. And with the sport, it's such an important thing. And thank you for, hopefully future-proofing it for them.
That's what we're trying. We're trying to future-proof it for the girls, and just trying to make it more equal for girls and boys, just to be a level playing field.
They need to know that it's an option, and I think that's the problem. Is you look at the women's opportunities, and cyclocross is pretty equal. They seem to have got it there, but on the road they've still got some work to do, I think. And the Tour de France is such an exciting, iconic race, and every little boy dreams of riding. Every little boy cyclist dreams of riding the Tour de France, but the girls just can't have that dream, which seems ridiculous.
It's crazy, and the Tour de France is massive, and the beauty of it is it transcends cycling too. So you'll get people that aren't even cycling fans that will be interested in the Tour de France because of the history of the race. So this year was the 107th edition. It's never missed an episode. Even this year, of all the things that got cancelled, including the Olympics, Tour de France still went ahead, and miraculously none of the riders got ill, and it all went well. The race director came down with COVID, which was a bit unfortunate for him partway through, but they pulled it off, and it was actually okay. So the Tour de France is huge. It transcends cycling. Everyone tunes in whether they like cycling or not. It's like the Olympics or something like that. It's bigger than the actual event it is. And there's just a massive gap in it, that there's nothing for women. So it's only this year that the Tour de France has done away with the podium girls. So that was the only place that women featured, by standing there kissing the men who won. It was absolutely ridiculous. There's a one-day event for the women, which is their equivalent, called La Course, which is just not enough. This year was incredible. Well, every year it's incredible. It's always a really exciting race, and you never know who's going to win. They race from the gun to the finish, and Lizzie Dinan won this year in a sprint finish that was millimeters apart. It was amazing. We're all screaming at the TV watching it. It was a 3-hour race. The men get 3 weeks, and then the ceremony wasn't even shown on TV because they had to cut to something else to get ready for the men's race. It's just absolutely ridiculous and not fair that's the women's portion of such a huge event with so much history and so much potential as well.
Yeah, I think that people want to watch women race. There is demand for it. It's interesting. It's usually more interesting than the men's races because people are such unknowns at the moment as well, for the general public. And which I guess maybe reduces the expectation on the women, so reduces the pressure. But yeah, people want to watch it. Women are out buying cycling kit now. Women are out buying bikes. There was a big press piece yesterday, I think it was, about how this year women, in running and cycling has just exploded, and that is amazing. And these sponsors want to get on the back of that. They want to move with that, and utilise that.
It's difficult though, because sponsors do want to get involved in it, but unless we get coverage of the races, then no one's going to see the sponsorship, and they're not doing it, you know, as a charity. They want to have their brands out there. They're a business after all. So the coverage is one of the main things that needs to be improved. And the UCI is helping. The UCI have got these rules that to be on the world tour, you have to have 45 minutes of coverage of a race to be classed as women's world tour. So the Giro, because they didn't do that this year, they've actually lost their status as world tour for the women's race for next year, the Giro Rosa. So the UCI are trying to help. It's then down to race organisers to hit those targets of coverage, and then once that coverage is there, the sponsorship will come, and then the role models will all be seen by more people, so you can get more involved in it, get more involved in the racing, and it's just easier to watch. Because at the moment, even with the example of the World Championships fairly recently, the men's race was on BBC and the women's race was on the red button, so you're not just going to stumble across it, you've actually got to specifically go and look for it, find out where it is, then watch it. Whereas if it's on BBC, you might just turn on the TV and then just start watching it. So it's another stumbling block, which makes it even harder for women's racing to get seen and to get enjoyed.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I don't know how I can help with that side, but you know, I feel every little bit helps. You know. Hopefully by just getting it out there that it's something that we want to be happening.
Just talking about women's racing gets more people talking about it, telling their friends about it, wanting to watch it. It all drives appetite for it. So that's what we can do, is to watch it ourselves and spread the word when races are on, or if something amazing has happened, tell people about it, and all viewing figures will then just increase.
And so you did the ride in 2019.
Yeah.
That was the first one. 2020 obviously it's been 2020. Is there plans to ride it next year, assuming it happens?
Yeah, absolutely. The plan is to go and ride the full Tour de France, the route of the Tour de France the day before the pros again next year, because we didn't get to France this year. So the same team that I had assembled to take this year are all keen to do it again next year. So even though there are rumours of there being a women's Tour de France in 2022, there's been no official details released by the ASO, the organising company, at all. So until we know that something's happening, our battle for equality isn't over. So yeah, we're absolutely planning on riding the full route again next year.
I think that's so inspirational for people to see, you know, on the social media side, but also, you know, people out and about in France, because they do start gathering in advance for the tour. You know, when we had it start in Yorkshire, we were up the day before looking. If they see a bunch of women going past, it's going to raise eyes and, you know, get people engaged with it.
It's absolutely brilliant. When we rode the Tour last year, the roads are already lined with all the camper vans, and the amazing thing is some of the super fans move along with the Tour. So we saw them in a few different locations. So then they were looking out for us the day before as well. Our names were being written on the roads, and we just felt, you know, wonderful. And we would take the time to wave and say hello and take it all in as well, because it's France at its best. I love France anyway, but when the Tour is on, everywhere is pristine. The roads were all like beautifully tarmacked. Everyone's gardens looked spot on. There was stuff in the fields. It was just wonderful. And because we weren't racing like, you know, all day, we could take it in. So we enjoyed all of that. We enjoyed all of the host towns that put on such a great show, and they enjoyed us being involved too. And those people are critical to demanding the women's tour as well. So that was important, to engage with people all around France as we cycled, to just say, look, the women deserve their own version of this. We want them to come through your towns and enjoy all of this too.
That sounds amazing. I'm not sure I'm good enough to be part of it, sadly, but it does sound awesome. So, I think we've really missed our travel this year. I think everybody has. And I think when it comes back, once we know what Brexit means for anybody, we'll... I think we'll all be flooding back to the continent, because, we've missed just being able to go to what has been on our doorstep, you know, in recent years.
Yeah, I think I never really took travel for granted, even though I've travelled a lot. I've been really lucky the last few years. I've found some freedom. I think coming through a divorce, I now actually have some time because my kids do go to my ex-husband's house every other weekend. So I have some free time to, enjoy being me and getting out on my bike and stuff. And I've been able to travel all over the world. I've cycled in America a lot. I've discovered cycling in Dubai last year, which was incredible as well. And France, popping over there for day trips and stuff. And then this year, not being able to go anywhere has been so hard. And just, don't know where to go first. If we could go anywhere tomorrow, if it was back, I'd just be like, oh, with all the choice. I'd probably do nothing and hop on my turbo because I don't know what to do with myself. But yeah, I've really missed travel. It's been a really, really hard year.
Yeah, I think the turbos have been amazing. I've certainly embraced Zwift. I've been doing training, bits and pieces on there, and I'm pretty sure I've got to shift up to a B category now. I've been a very comfortable C, winning some races, which has been fun, and now my husband said, "Oh, it's on." I was looking on Zwift Power. It says you're a B now. Damn it! So.
I've spent most of this year on my turbo because with being a single mum and the boys, normally when they're at school, that's when I do the bulk of my training. I've been homeschooling them this year, which, oh gosh, massive respect for teachers now. My mum was a teacher, so I had an insight when I was a kid into what it was, and now I know for sure I never want to be a teacher. And it's just been so hard. But thanks to having a turbo at home, I've been able to keep training, thank goodness. Otherwise, I would have been able to do nothing. And actually, turbo training's really hard. And, some people say, oh, it's not the same. No, it's not the same. But it's a damn good workout because there's no coasting. There's no, stops for a cafe. There's no junctions, traffic lights. It's full on. There's no point where I'm not pushing the pedals. So this year, I've managed to push my FTP way higher than it was last year, and all the stuff I did last year was incredible, but this year I'm fitter than ever with nowhere to go, which is rubbish, but it's amazing. And the online community is great. All the stuff that I've been doing on there with racing and community rides and stuff like that, I've been on Zwift, RGT, Ruvy's another one. It's just brilliant, and you chat to people while you're riding too. You look forward to the races, and it's been wonderful, and it's really come into its own this year. But there's no chance to just rest on your laurels and enjoy it. Like if you move up a category like you have, you'll be suffering and then losing, and then you'll get better. But then before long, you'll be at the bottom of another category. It's like when I've done my FTP test, I think, oh, I want to go up, and then I feel so, happy that my FTP's up. But then all my new zones are horrible. My zone 1 now is exhausting, whereas it used to be just chilling. So it's great training though.
It is, and the focus it gives you, I think, has just been brilliant. And for the people that are less confident about getting the lycra on, showing off the bulges that they might be a bit embarrassed about, the fear of getting stuck in the middle of nowhere with a puncture. I mean, we always say, if you're out our way and you get a puncture, give us a shout and we'll try and help. But there is no sort of formal network of help, is there? So I think it's a great starting point for people to get more confident in their bodies, get used to sweating, get used to exerting themselves, which is typically not very feminine thing to do, get that comfort in your own home, and then hit the road and then hit the real world races, because online is amazing, the community, etc., but it's out there actually meeting the people where you get your greatest satisfaction out of riding, I think.
Yes, I think you're right. I think it just is, when you get more confident just in turning the pedals, whether it's in a spin class or on your turbo, you're then more likely to want to go outside as well. So it's a really good stepping stone for cycling as a whole, for sure. And
have you got any, you're doing amazing things anyway, have you got any long-term goals with your cycling?
I think long term, I would love to represent GB again. So actually, I qualified this year for the Grand Vendée World Championships, and so that will roll over to next year. So I'd love to represent Great Britain again, ride the Tour again, and then I would love to see there be an equivalent for the Tour de France, and then go out and enjoy that. There's a few other races and things I'd like to tick off. There's, the classic climbs that I haven't done yet in France that I'd like to go out and do. More riding in America. I've enjoyed some crit racing and stuff I've done over there, which is fun. I'd like to get back into some of that as well. So there's always going to be stuff to keep me interested in cycling and just exploring new places, I suppose.
Cool. And do your kids like cycling?
My kids do enjoy cycling, but I don't cycle with them very much because I get really nervous about them. They're aged 10 and 12, so they're not tiny, but my 10-year-old's a little bit wobbly and a bit gung-ho, and I just feel nervous about being with them, and I never know whether to go in front of them or behind them, so I don't cycle out on the roads with them. I just don't feel confident doing it. When I'm by myself on the roads, I have cars going way too close to me and stuff like that, and I'm just a nervous wreck when my children are there. So they do ride with my ex-husband a bit more. He's a bit more open to risk than I am, and I just try not to think about it sometimes. But no, I'd like to ride with them more, but I sadly I don't feel safe doing it.
No, I think more needs to be done to stop motorists trying to... the lack of regard for human life makes me really sad.
It's exactly that. It's just awful. We're not seen as a person on a bike. We're just seen as a nuisance or someone who's delaying someone else or in the way. And it's just not okay. And it's really quite scary. And it's driven me to often ride indoors instead of outdoors, and I know how to handle a bike, and I've ridden a lot for the last few years, but even I get put off, so it's just another stumbling block for people going out. So I encourage people to ride with friends or let people know where they're going and stuff. Like my mum's got a location tracker on me just in case I'm in a ditch for a few days or something like that. But it's stuff that we shouldn't even really have to worry about. I wish there was more consideration for cyclists by drivers and other road users.
I've got a girl that I did race with, and she got hit by a car this year even, and ended up in hospital. So I think it's that sort of hammered home. She's a very, very solid rider, but I think, like you say, that's just lack of regard for other people.
Yeah, and I think since becoming a mum as well, it's just, I can't just be so blasé about stuff. I had a conversation with someone last week and they're like, well, that's just the risk you take when you go out as a cyclist. You might get hit, you might get killed. And I'm like, I'm not okay with that. No, I don't have to take those risks. And I use my brakes going down hills, and I don't cycle like a maniac because I don't want to die and I don't want my children to be without a mother. So I think that's just, a mentality thing at times, which some men don't seem to understand when they're cycling like lunatics, or maybe some people that don't think through, or I have a tendency to often think worst case scenario, so I will worry more than most about coming off. But I've had a couple of near misses even this year when things have been quieter, where I've just thought, gosh, I'm risking my life each time I go out on a bike, and it's scary sometimes.
Any thoughts what we can do about that?
I think all that can be done really is education. I think drivers need educating about the highway code. The way sometimes they go nuts when people ride in twos. They don't need to go crazy because there's no law saying that we have to ride in the gutter in single file, and it's actually dangerous to ride where all the potholes and all that stuff are. So I think I'd love to see an advert on television or something like that to just try and educate people about cyclists on the road needing space. And I don't know, I think quite a lot's been done that we all know when we see a horse that you have to slow right down and you have to give them plenty of space, but people don't seem to do that for cyclists for some reason.
No, and the speed they go past in quite big vehicles, it has quite an impact.
It does. It's like being on the platform when a train goes past, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I hadn't thought of that one. But yeah, it is that sort of sucks you towards it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's it's another thing we have to campaign for. We'll add it to the list of equality and equal prize money, equal opportunity, and a bit of safety.
I think that's road safety affects all cyclists, so that's just not a female battle at all. That's something that the blokes can help us with. There's more of the male cyclists out there, so they can help with educating and just letting people know about being safe on the roads and being comfortable. And maybe helping to protect those who aren't as confident by riding with them, or protecting them by riding on the outside of them or something.
Yeah, there do seem to be quite a few groups springing up about, helping with road awareness and things like that.
Yeah.
Which I think is important, particularly for people coming into cycling and wanting to get out, because there is nothing better than being out on a beautiful day, enjoying the countryside. And I mean, Europe, I go on holiday to Greece, Italy, I don't know where else I've cycled, Turkey a bit, and they've got a different level of respect for you. Like they hoot their horn, but it's to say, I'm coming past, or hi there, rather than get out of the way. And they seem to have mastered their sense of humanity a little bit more than the Brits, and it's embarrassing, really.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because they've more of a tradition in cycling, that it's just taken, they're years ahead of us in accepting cyclists on the road on the continent, or I don't know what it is, but there certainly is a different attitude to it when you ride on the continent to when you ride in GB, where you're just, a nuisance.
I definitely feel like that, but I don't let it stop me. I mean, I do take my kids out, but I'm out in the countryside, so I did get berated by a 60-year-old woman once who said, I think that's disgraceful with the kids. And I was on the road cycling in our village to the school, taking them to school. And but then on the same point, a friend had her kids on scooters on the pavement, and the old man had a go at her. So you literally can't win. But I just feel in a little village, but actually sometimes it's the school-run parents. They terrify me. They absolutely terrify me. Even when I was walking today, actually, down the pavement, and I had to tuck my elbow in. This car came so close, and it's a dad driving his kid to school, past a mum walking her child to school. And I think people are in such big cars now, there's so much padding, around them. They're just not aware of the world outside their car. And it was really scary. Took me by surprise. But
yeah, it is scary.
Do you? So you got into cycling more post divorce, and it sounds like that definitely maybe the emotional issues you were dealing with helped keep those pedals turning hard and fast. Do you think there is what are the benefits of cycling and sport in general for people, particularly women, who maybe struggle emotionally with sort of mental health and in a general term? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think cycling's incredibly powerful for men and women to help with mental health and how you feel about yourself and life in general. I know for me that I was going through a really hard time in my life and struggling with everything. When my boys were very little, I felt I'd lost my identity, that I just was mum, and it didn't make me tick, and I found it really hard. I also wasn't very happy with my body. I'd put on weight and stuff through pregnancy, and then when the boys were little and stuff, and I was miserable, really miserable, and cycling just helped pull me out of all of that, because the weight just came off the more and more I cycled, and the more conscious I got as I was wearing lycra and stuff. I wanted to lose weight, and then it just happened, and you're getting out and about and you're breathing in fresh air and you've got a purpose, and you suddenly look forward to getting fitter, and you look forward to the seasons changing, and you look forward to seeing other people. And when you're in a rut and miserable, you're not looking forward to anything at all. It was absolutely Groundhog Day all the time when the boys were little, and cycling just helped pull me out of that. So yeah, I think it's incredible for people's mental health, just to get out there, meet other people, get some fresh air, and just get your legs moving. Absolutely.
Did you get, I'm quite fortunate, my husband's been quite supportive of my cycling. He got into it first, and actually he was joking how we were both racing the other night, and he got the 10-year-old really rubbish turbo trainer because our other one's in transit, and the good one was for me because I was like, no, I'm getting the good one because actually our women's team was doing really well, and I was like, you're not just having it by default. And there'd been a little tete-a-tete a few weeks ago about it, and then, you know, this one, there was no discussion. He respected that, and but I'm really fortunate. I hear of some instances where the husbands decided to do something first, and the woman just has to put up with sloppy seconds a little bit.
It's often that way. My husband was into cycling, and when I got faster than him, he hated it. Absolutely hated it. And I think he thought it was a reflection on his manhood or something. I don't know. And actually, it feels that way even to men I'm not married to, just on a club run. Some men get so upset about a woman overtaking them that they're almost killing themselves to keep up with you or to overtake you back or whatever, especially for me because I'm quite little. My bike is bright pink, so, you know, people think that I'm just going to be some sort of Barbie on a bike or something, and then I burn it past, and they're, you know, killing themselves to get me back and stuff. And you just think, gosh, lads, calm it down. It doesn't mean anything. It's not about you. If we train more and we're stronger, we're going to go faster because if we're lighter and stuff too, our power to weight is going to be great. So I think there's a lot of men who are intimidated by us being good. It sounds like you've got a great husband that's worth clinging on to because he supports you, and that support's wonderful. I'm thankful now. I'm engaged to someone who's extremely supportive of my cycling. He actually came on the tour with us. He was one of the drivers and one of our support crew, and he's wonderful. He's just so proud of everything that I've done, and he just helps me, and we both help each other along the way because as a team you're stronger, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without his support. And the ability to make bikes work does help. So I'm not going to lie, but yeah, it is that sort of, you know, when I had a couple of weeks ago, I had a really bad week, and I just felt in a really bad space mentally. And on the Friday, I was suddenly like, I'm going to do a race on Zwift. And he's like, go for it. Cool. I'll do bedtime. Go for it. And he could obviously tell that I'd not had a great week. I think I'd said, you know, I'm not feeling great this week. I don't really know why. You know, I don't know, the weather was not great. And it just changed me for the weekend. Getting in this race, I went on and I found this Irish race, and so I was racing with, I don't know, 15, 20 women, and we had a bit of a chat afterwards, and I said, you know, I was feeling really rubbish today and this week, and this has just lifted me, thank you so much. And yeah, it was just so important having that support. Whereas if he'd gone, well, no, it's 6:30 on a Friday night and the kids aren't in bed, you know, who's going to do that? I'd have gone, okay, well, I'm going to do that, you know, and put them to bed. And then by that point, it would be 8 o'clock, and then I'd be exhausted and not want to do it. So it's so, so important to have these partners that support what we're doing.
The sad thing is, between me and my ex-husband, is now we actually do work as a team because we have to. So between us, we do manage the kids. So he has them at certain times and I have them, you know, the bulk of the time. But we actually work together to make that happen now. Whereas at the time when we were married, it was just me. He had a big job, so that was his thing, and everything else just fell onto me. And it's just not okay, because you do need some time for yourself, especially when your kids are little, because it is non-stop. You know, even you can sit on the toilet, Mum, and just like, oh God, just let me go to the loo. Or my parents were convinced that my knife and fork had some sort of alarm, because as soon as I lifted them, a kid would scream. I'm just like, I can't do anything. And it's so hard. I really feel for new mums. I love babies. I think they're so gorgeous, but they are such hard work.
Yeah, I think the pressure we put on ourselves, and the pressure we have as well to become mums. I mean, I didn't know if I necessarily would want to have kids. My husband and I met when I was 16. We'd been together like 20 years. And wow. It was probably inevitable, but we were both a bit like, we'll see. And then he nearly died, and that was kind of the trigger for, like, literally the same day, in 2 different locations, we had the same change, and we had a phone call, and that was decision made. And wow. It was just, but we were so in sync with that decision, so it was great. But it still felt like it was all on me, which is ridiculous because it takes two to make babies. And I think it's, we the training is, isn't it? You know, get dolls, you know, and you're going to be the mum. And when you're not, when you don't feel like you're being the perfect mum, and it's not feeling easy, you feel like you're failing on such a big scale, and that is very hard.
It is hard.
Yeah, hopefully by talking about it more now. I wish I'd come into cycling. I mean, I spoke to one woman last week, I think it was, and she had cycled before. She cycled through pregnancy until the bump got so big. Then she did some skiing because she could stand upright, and it worked. And she just kept going. And she said emotionally it kept her sane. Whereas pregnancy was really, particularly my second pregnancy, I remember friends afterwards said, if we hadn't known you before this pregnancy, we probably wouldn't be your friends anymore. And I was like, no, it's been really, really...
God, you've got honest friends.
And luckily, you know, they kept me going. But yeah, it was really hard. And I wish I'd had something like cycling. I'm really, you know, listening to this woman talk, I was really jealous. I was like, oh, that would have been so nice. Because I horse rode. And I sold my horse when I got pregnant because I was like, actually, you know, I feel that's too risky. And I didn't want to ride her. And I was thinking beyond, like, having to look after a horse and a baby might not go well. And again, my husband was really supportive. He said, well, I can do stuff. He hates horses, but, you know, or not hate, but, you know, he didn't want to look after her. But he offered to, but I just thought I'm going to feel guilty that he's doing something there as well. So it was completely the right decision, but it meant my life was a bit purposeless,
yes,
external to just looking after a child, and then I felt guilty for feeling like that, you know, in my nice house with, you know, modern day comforts that previous generations haven't had, and then the guilt spirals.
It's really hard because, you know, we feel it, when we've got everything should be wonderful and perfect, and that's where I found myself, in that place when the boys were very little, but I still felt, you know, rubbish and had no identity, that I just thought, what's wrong with me? And I actually went to the doctors and I just said, I feel really bad even being here, because on paper I've got everything. I've got a lovely house, my husband's got a big job, my boys are healthy, I'm healthy, but I just feel crap. And I was just in this hole, and I had postnatal depression, and thankfully I'd gone and asked for help, and I then started talking therapies. I got prescribed antidepressants, and then all the cycling stuff happened and managed to get myself out of all of it. But it takes realising that you're in that place and talking to someone about it to get out of that, and I'm keen to do that. Or I'm quite big on social media, and I'm quite honest about my struggles and how easy it is to get back there too, which has been quite shocking. You know, with this year that we've had has been so tricky and so scary at times that I've found myself sliding very quickly into, you know, negative thoughts and struggling again. And I just think it's really important to just try and stay on top of it by talking to others about it, because everyone's struggling in different ways, but just not everyone opens up about it. And you don't want it to ever get too late. Sadly, I lost a friend to suicide this year, because this year has just been too hard, and she just felt that there was no other option, and that has really thrown me, and I would hate for that to happen to anyone else I know. So I just keep talking to people and just keep saying, look, please talk to me, please let me know how I can help, if I can do anything, or just be someone that you can talk to about what's worrying you, but please do, because it's so important. It's way too easy, and you think that everything's okay, and then suddenly something happens and it just pulls the wheels out from under you. I remember when the boys were little, I was coping with all of the things that were always going wrong, and then when something extra went wrong, I think my washing machine started leaking. I lost my shit that day. I was just like, rah! And my husband at the time came home and he's like, what's happened? I was like, the washing machine's leaking. He was like, but really? Are you going this crazy about it? But it was just like the cherry on the top, and it was just bam, that was it. my reaction to it was nuclear, but you just keep coping and then one thing will throw you. And it's the same this year. I think the underlying stress of just getting through 2020 is mega. If you have a few more things thrown in, before you know it, you could slide very, very quickly into feeling just completely helpless and so out of control. I'm a complete control freak about everything. And this year has been awful for me because I haven't been able to control a thing.
No, I think you're right. It is. Yeah, I have a similar personality by the sound of things. And yes, something, everything can be fine. And then suddenly it's not. And doesn't everybody know about it, including the neighbours, in all directions for a 3-mile radius. But, everybody's going through it. And like, the more we hide it, the more it has that potential to explode in a big way.
Right.
So, I'm going to let you go because I'm aware it's very much past lunchtime. It's been so lovely speaking to you. You've covered such wonderful things. I'm so excited for the Tour de France, the women's version next year, in whatever form that is. I was so excited this year when they did the women's virtual Tour de France, and I thought this is the year they'll do it because we're ripping up every single sheet is being ripped up, but no, they didn't.
And we almost had Paris-Roubaix, and then it went again.
They're trying, they're on the cusp. And we've got some amazing men supporting in the cycling organisations who are really behind equality. There's a big equality drive happening in the UK at the moment for equal prize money being pushed with CTT, which is really, really cool. I've sat in on those meetings and there's a lot of passion there which is happening, and men pushing for it as well. I put it to my cycling club Satonia to put it in our constitution about equality, because there was nothing in our constitution. The British cycling template has it in it, but of course if you're an old club you've lost that, you haven't taken it on necessarily. And we had some interesting chats. One guy did say, but we might find ourselves in a position where we have women and we're paying them the same money as men. I said, that's the whole point.
Right.
That's literally what I'm asking for. And he was like, oh, okay. And it took him a while. He's like, well, I'm in favour of it in overall, Gemma. I just need to think about it. Okay. And it was really, my husband had warned me. He said there would be some, and that's fine. Like, traditions are there to be broken. I think tradition is just a complete and utter ludicrous thing in modern day. I think we need to throw a lot of traditions out the window.
So when that old guy was saying that, he wasn't even really thinking about what he was saying, but if he would then hear himself, he'd be like, oh, of course. Or when you have to explain it sometimes to a child, you realise how ridiculous something is. Like, no, you shouldn't get the same as your brother because you're a girl. What? It's not okay. So, yeah.
Once you break it down and start addressing it, I think that's the key. Start talking about it, start having the discussion, however we choose to do that, I think is so important. But get people thinking. Like, we've turned ourselves off a little bit. We read stuff on social media, but we don't necessarily think about what's happening behind it. And hopefully this will open some eyes and ears to the changes that can happen.
Thank you for everything you're doing too, because it all helps to spread the message and get more people talking about it. And let's just keep in touch and share each other's stuff. And it's empowering. It's great.
Wow. Well, I hope you'll agree. She was incredibly inspiring. I was so honoured to have her on and so interested to find out about what she's been getting up to in cycling since she started. I'm going to be back for a second episode, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but we'll see how things go. I am on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram with @WheelWomenPod. So if you'd like to follow it, like it, etc., and interact with my posts, that would be amazing. I'd love some feedback on what I did well, what not so well, what you liked, what you didn't like. If you've got any suggestions of people you'd like me to interview, feel free to send them over and I'll reach out to them. Or if you know them, send them my way and say, I'd like you to be involved in this. And basically I'm just here to open up the world of cycling, women in cycling, make it feel really accessible, hopefully inspire some people to go and give it a go. We're going to talk to some people who do some competitive racing at the lower levels to hopefully inspire that as well. Just keep listening, keep watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And well done for getting this far because it's pretty long. Take care. Bye bye.